Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Sandy. This is my business partner, Sarah, and we are facilitating this session. I'm going to kind of talk to our awesome friends out on the live stream as well, so I'll be kind of speaking to them as much as I hope I'm speaking to you. We've time-boxed this to about 55 minutes. Sarah and I are obsessed with a few things. Keeping to time, although I do talk too much, sticky notes, and lots of kind of co-creation. So we've got two challenges, and we're going to spend a couple of minutes describing them. Then I'm going to do a round of clarification, so we understand the two problems that we're solving for. And then we're going into some heavily ideated sticky note sessions because if I'm really blunt, I need to suck every great idea out of your head in the next 50 minutes. So, the background. I started on this particular phase of the internet governance journey 2 years ago. When I agreed to take on the role, I thought it would take 2 months. And I'm still doing it 2 years later. We have an organising committee. We've called it the steering committee. I think that's unsexy. We have an organising committee of volunteers that has brought NetThing together today. And it's a broad, diverse mix. There are about 25 of us on that organising committee. The organising committee has been open to anyone. Although if any of you have seen the mailing list interface that you have to kind of engage with, I'm not quite sure it's that open. The steering committee has been open to all participants, so we've got about 25. But if I'm really honest, maybe about 8 of us do the work. And I think if you think to any community group that you're involved in, a gardening club, a book club, any other meetup that you go to, there's always 3 or 4, 5, 6 really active people, and then there's kind of tier 2, and then there's like tier 3 and tier 4. And I suppose maybe that's just the way the world works. But the upside is when you've only got a few people, you can get shit done really quickly. The downside is it's exhausting. I'm exhausted. And so we would like to think about 2 things today. One is around the actual organising committee, of which you've met all of us in pink today. And there's a challenge statement we want to unpack around how do we grow that committee. And that committee has put together NetThing. And in the round of clarification, transparency rules. So I've got everything in my head about how much this thing's cost, where we got the money from, who was involved, who did the work. And I'm happy to share that because one of the challenges I want to unpack today is how do we grow the organising committee? How do we activate them? How do we keep them engaged? And the second challenge statement is about the broader community. So we had 207 RSVPs today. That's the right word, isn't it? I get it. Sometimes I say RSPCA instead of RSVP, but I love animals. We had 207 or 210 RSVPs. Maybe 150 have turned up, not sure. The second question we were going to unpack today is how do we grow the community? How do we grow and engage that community? When NetThing was born, this version of NetThing, we said let's just do an event. Let's do a gathering, which is today. But that's only once a year. Do we need to meet monthly? Do we need to engage in different states and regional areas? For those of you that have been involved in Internet NZ's NetHui, they are out there in the regions, right? They are travelling, they have an annual gathering, they've got lots of kind of things that go on. So the second statement that we want to pose is how do we grow the community? How do we grow and engage the Australian internet community? So do you think I've missed anything? Okay. So what I'd like to now do for 3 to 5 minutes is a round of clarification and just check that we understand we've got 2 problems to solve. One is how do we grow this organising committee and keep them engaged? And then the second one is how do we grow and engage the broader community?
Same thing, but I see the two things that I see, the two aspects that I see is one is how to get things done. The other one is how to get information kind of get into the hand of those who need to know about it so that we can hear back. So these are two separate things in my head, and we can come up with different mechanisms for both. Getting things done can be funded, can be volunteer-based, organized, and how we spread information.
Question from Lynn Spender.
I just want to know the advantages and disadvantages of government support in this. At my age, I'm very wary.
I'll give you my perspective, and it'd be interesting to hear from the room. My perspective is we need all of us in the room. We need all of us participating and all of us helping. If I think back to the last year and a half, 2 years, there was a moment in February this year where this nearly folded again. The organising committee, we couldn't get anyone to stump up cash. We couldn't get anyone to stump up help apart from the organisers. The only people that were here consistently was the Department of Communications. They have been here as a bedrock from a government perspective since day one. They provided a secretariat. DFAT have been there on day one and then they went MIA. And I'm being honest, DFAT's been critical to getting this started, but they've been MIA over the last 18 months, and maybe that's not their role to be here, but DOCA's been fantastic. So my perspective is we need all of us. Anyone want to share?
Can we have a clarification there? Was that support or participation of government?
I'd say both.
I'm asking for a clarification. Sorry, I'd like clarification of the question. Was the question about is government support or government participation the issue?
I'm wary of both, and I don't mean that they should be dismissed out of hand. I mean that we should have very clear boundaries about their role. And yes, stump up some money if you want this sort of thing to go ahead, but don't necessarily try to dominate, particularly on a day like today where they haven't.
Thank you. Paul Brooks, and then we'll go to Ian Peter.
So as one of the people in the original workshop that sort of we went to Canberra only because it was somewhere central for all the people that were interested in this to pull together. DFAT, I think, helped facilitate that meeting, things like that. The intent from government at that very much was that government absolutely did not want to be seen to be driving this. In fact, for it to be a true internet governance forum, it needs to be grassroots, come up. It was up to us to pull together the group, to pull together the event. Their involvement was to say, we need to hear you, we want to hear your ideas, we can do something with it maybe, we want to see Australia have a role in global internet governance, and currently we don't. So if we can facilitate the industry, the community getting together to do what an Australian IGF should do, to generate the ideas that Australia can then take to the global IGF and the regional IGFs, that was the goal that they were looking. So there's absolutely no strings attached. Some money was involved, but even then, they were very careful that they did not want to be driving or seeding the thing. They would tip some cash in, but only if we could show that the rest of the non-government community would tip in first. So it was very, very gentle. The government was very hands-off on getting this up and running. They wanted it. They weren't going to drive it because that would then take away the entire rationale for how an IGF should form from the people and move up in the first place.
Thank you, Paul. Ian?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I guess what I'm most interested in is what's the best mechanism that can involve us here and involve those in Australia in bringing about effective change in the very big mess we have with internet governance, if that's the term you want to use. And I just want to ask these questions because I'm not quite sure that just having an annual meeting is anything of an answer is going to achieve. And I wonder if we ought to be looking at some of the models that have taken place elsewhere in the world. I'll give you one example. Until the recent Bolsonaro government took effect in Brazil, there was a very effective structure in Brazil called NetMundial. They had a great international conference a few years ago. The NetMundial thing involved, at a national level in Brazil, the presence of government, working with industry, working with civil society, in a body that was funded, was properly funded, and was used as the mechanism to address government policy issues, to involve all stakeholders. Now, that achieves something. That really gets somewhere, and I'm just wondering whether the emphasis here should be on, let's have another conference next year, or whether the question should be, what can we do more effectively, and how would we go about that?
So it's kind of, I think what Ian's done is actually made a couple of really good suggestions. These are the things that we want to get out in the sticky note session, which is about to start in a minute. Because I take your point, is just a yearly thing, a yearly gathering, going to cut the mustard. And I'm going to go over to Laurie.
Thank you, Laurie Patton. Two comments. I think it was the last one of these that we held. I facilitated a session on Indigenous engagement, and somebody came up to me afterwards and said, that was fantastic, but we said all that last time. So unless you can create some outcomes that are measurable so that there's some point in doing it, why would you come again? And the second thing is, where's Vicky? Got to have the government in the room, otherwise we're wasting our time.
Okay, thank you. So that's, I suspect that will come out in a sticky note too around outcomes and outputs. From a transparency point of view, actually from a narcissistic point of view, I as the chair have an organising committee of a very small group, so I'm really interested in how we grow and engage and create an environment for that committee to feel like they can do stuff, which is coming back to your how. And then the second one is more broader around the community. Any final clarification questions? I can share. Pardon? We're going to pose two questions. We're going to split the session up and take us through each question at a time. We're going to pose a how might we statement. We're going to do some quiet sticky noting. We're going to then come together in small groups. There's enough of us here, which is exciting. So I'll explain that in a moment. Just for the sake of transparency, does anyone need to understand how much this has cost, what it's taken us to pull together? Because this thing needs money, right? And it took a while to get anyone to stump up cash this year, but they came. We've pulled this off for less than $45,000, but it's taken numerous volunteers, unpaid people. Other conferences, $250,000, $100,000, I suppose you can do it for somewhere in between. So let's perhaps, if we're all okay, I want to pose the first how might we statement. So the question that I think we've come up with, Sarah, is how might we
grow the community of organisers? How might we grow the community of organisers / volunteer base?
So there were 25 that joined the steering committee. There's about 10 of us that are active. The question, how might we grow that? So the way it'll work is we'll do quiet note and vote first. So we're going to time box this to 3 minutes. As many ideas, no talking, do it yourself, as many ideas as you can come up with in 3 minutes. At the end of 3 minutes, I'm going to get you to do a vote on your own output. So we'll start the timer now. 3 minutes. How might we grow the community organiser / volunteer base?
One idea per sticky and as many ideas as you can come up with.
Okay, I'll get you to finish up your last sticky. And what I'd like you to now do over the next 30 seconds is have a look at everything you've come up with and pick your top 2. Chuck out everything else. Unless you think you've actually got 5 really awesome ideas. Top 2. Okay. I want you to finish up. You've got your top 2, maybe your top 3 if you're a person of awesome ideas. Now I'd like you to break into groups of 4. So some of you are going to get up and move around. I need as many groups of 4 as possible, if you can get up now. And in your groups of 4, we're going to give you about 3 minutes. Share all of your ideas, and then in your group, come up with your top 3. Your top 2, your top 3, your top 4, whatever it is, a short amount of the favourites amongst your group. So upwards, into groups of 4. Go and hang with someone you haven't met before.
What about you, 4?
5 minutes? How are we going for time?
Yeah, we're fine. We're good for time.
Okay, 5 minutes in your groups of 4. Share your ideas. If there's contention in your group and you need to dot vote, we have sticky dots here. Looking for your top 3. And cut. Cut. Cut, cut, cut. Anyone listening? Okay, can I round you up? You've got your top 3. Now, one of the most important things that you need to do is assign a group lead. Each of you needs a group lead. Pick a group lead now. And then secondly, if it's not the group lead, pick the person who has the most beautiful handwriting in your group. Who has the most beautiful handwriting in your group? And if your top 3 ideas are not beautifully written, do so now, and they need to be in thick black texter. Not biro, thick black texter, beautifully written. It's bossy, isn't it? Your top 3. You voted for your top 3, but if they're not beautifully written in thick black texter, they need to be rewritten. Top 3. Can I have a show of hands? Which groups have got their top 3 ready?
More time? This group's rewriting. They're rewriting.
Good, we're nearly there.
How's this group going? You got your top 3.
And have you decided amongst yourselves who will be your group representative? The group representative should be able to read the writing. That would help. Okay. Rewriting. No more discussion. No more discussion, guys. Writing, voting. We ready? How'd you go? All right. Okay. Tiny little more time, 30 seconds. For those of you that have been to a design sprint workshop, you would not be getting an extra 30 seconds. They're really tight ass with their time. But we're being gracious because it's so important. Yes. Okay. Can you each assign a group representative? Do you have your group representative? We need a group representative. Okay. Now I'd like us to come back together collectively. So I'd like us to say thank you to our group and return to this collective wholeness that exists in the room. And who'd like to start? The way we want to do this is get your top 3 ideas up onto the butcher's paper where Sarah is. We're going to attempt to do some live theming. So as items come up, we'll attempt to do live theming. If not, we'll theme while we do the next question. So can I take a volunteer from the first group? Who would like to get up and share your 3 best awesome ideas in 60 seconds? Andrew. You're group 1. You volunteered. Up to the... And you might need a microphone.
I can. Okay, the idea that came from a couple of people independently was involve universities and students. We need new blood, we need bright people, we need participation.
So that's awesome, that idea.
All right, we need to involve sponsors in the organising committee. I think some have held back because they didn't want to be seen with conflicting the process. You know, as the suggestion, you know, what do we want? Should government be involved? That sort of thing. As long as everyone gets a voice and no one gets to determine what the dialogue is, but everyone gets heard, then they should be there and have a chance to participate in those discussions. And thirdly, we have having champions in other organisations, groups, etc., which is, there's got to be some messaging around NetThing and the value it has to the broader community and to other groups. So, yes, we want to focus on building up the steering committee, but part of that is having a really clear message to everyone else about why NetThing matters and their opportunity for them to be involved.
Fantastic start. Thank you very much, Andrew. Who'd like to go next? Paul, for your group?
We can go next. So yes, we came up with 3 ideas, which are variations on a theme there. One is that reputation is key. This is the first one. But after word gets out and Twitter is completely trending and everything goes out, the chance to work with the key influencers and the awesome people that are on the organising committee should bring more people in who want to meet and work with those people. So that should create a stream of new people that want to come in, because they will then be able to be working elbow to elbow with their industry idols. And in this industry, it's a small industry, everybody knows everybody, and quite often you know a name even if you've never met them, and you think, I want to meet and work with that person. More focused events, probably similar to the IETF, which has 3 or 4 meetings a year scattered along everyone, but rather than like today's meeting, which is fairly superficially skipping on multiple topics and really only being able to address it for a few minutes per speaker, have an entire day on a topic, even a fairly narrow topic. The experts that are in that field, because they're passionate about it, it should be easier to encourage them to help with organising it, so that they can help get ideas in from the community on their pet topic.
Thank you very much, Paul. Next group.
And third one.
I beg your pardon.
Working more with consumer advocacy groups such as Choice, getting some stories published and some articles about NetThing and the importance of internet governance in the months leading up to it. Should get more blood in and a call to action to participate in something that these groups know is important for their constituents, and they want to learn more about it from the experts.
Thank you. Next group. Bronwyn.
Okay, so we have three main ideas. The first one is an immediate recruitment campaign. So starting today, we need to start recruiting for next year's event. So that might be through just announcing at the end of the day that we're open to volunteers to organise next year's event, and just through the people who are attending the event today, we could get some people put their hand up. That could also be like a mass communications campaign on social media, or people reaching out through their personal connections. So that's a multifaceted one about immediately starting to recruit for next year from today.
Thank you.
The other ones are kind of tied together. One of them is about selecting organisations and getting them to invite people, selecting organisations and getting them to come on board as members of the steering committee. So I think that kind of ties into getting the sponsors to be on the committee. And another one was talking to organisations or like universities and getting them to get students along as a way of a sort of internship. So maybe that could count towards their studies, or perhaps the opportunity to work with sort of industry leaders in the organising committee could be something that's beneficial to students' careers. So you could sell it as a really good opportunity for their personal development.
Thank you. Chance to hang out with Paul Brooks. Next group. Who have we got over there? Clay? It's important to get them up, though, because there might be a natural hierarchy emerging, especially with the university idea.
Okay, so the university one was one of them, and the corporate sponsors involved in different places and getting them involved early was another. My post-its are still there. This is the only new one. And this is more, you mentioned that there was a big organizing committee, but only maybe 10 people were doing most of the work. So a lot of NOGs and other IGFs, APR IGF and stuff, they have separate committees that look after different issues. So that splits the load. It makes it more reasonable for everyone involved, so it's a little easier for people to get involved. You can have a program committee and then a logistics committee, maybe a steering committee, different things like that. And it also kind of puts the pressure a little bit more. If you volunteer for a committee, then you have a little bit more ownership and are more likely to get involved.
Awesome, thank you. So we had two that were similar and a new one. Thank you, Clay.
Just basically instead of having one big... So basically, instead of just having one big one big committee do everything, within that committee, split it up into separate the work. Basically, share the workload. Yeah.
Next group.
Thanks. So I think most of the ideas we've had, I've heard mentioned already. The first one is we need a clear vision. We need some concrete outcomes, and we need a way to demonstrate the value of engaging in the forum. The next idea the group had was it needs to be clear what the relevance of the issues being discussed here is to the daily lives of citizens, to generate more interest in engaging in the forum. And then the last one we had was about the outreach that we do, and we had the idea that maybe student groups is a good place to target this outreach as well.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you very much. Are you guys done? You over there, weren't you, Narelle? Yep. Hello.
Building on what other people said.
Get the microphone.
Particularly focusing on the need for a structural funding model, so we're not coming back next year with the same questions about we're scraping the bottom of the barrel for people to help and dollars, and there have been some concrete suggestions there. There was comment about particularly targeted invitations for people and groups that aren't here, and may derive particular benefit when we've got the value proposition organised, including, banks who may contribute and for whom this sort of arena should be high on their agenda, and a sense of networks when asking people to join and work, and maybe on a subcommittee around a particular area, as someone said, we're asking them what skills they've got or what in-kind resources they could bring, so that they're not being expected to be generalists, and in a way you're pinning their commitment down a little bit more. And maybe saying, could you be the on-call person for a month, so that you'll be very busy for a month and you'll be on the committee the rest of the time, and so that sense of load is shared a bit more evenly than, the last person standing is the one that does it all.
Great, thank you. Have we got through everyone? Great. So, Adam has a comment.
Thanks. Actually, kind of two things. That while often these positions are filled by volunteers, quite often they're on a salary from an organisation that does actually care. Very few people are doing it in their spare time, and that's probably a bit presumptuous of me, but that's an interesting thing to keep in mind, and it kind of ties in with the sponsorship idea. But what I really wanted the microphone was to challenge your statement that you need to grow the committee. You had 30 people, 25, 30 people on the committee, but you said only 8 people did the work, so you actually need a committee of 8 to maybe 10 people.
No, because we're exhausted.
You were doing it for the first time, which makes it a lot more difficult. And so having a committee of more than 30 people, unless you do break it up as was just suggested, will be completely unmanageable, and instead of having 20 people who are doing nothing, you'll have 40 people who are doing nothing.
That was a profound insight, which I wish we had at the beginning of the how might we question. And I'm going to keep it moving because we need to get to the next question.
Can I just say, if you had one paid organiser, you could have 8 members on the committee, but with nobody paid, everybody trying to earn a living, it was impossible.
And I do take your point. There are lots of awesome organisations that lend their staff to work on these initiatives, but for many of us, we are not paid. So, second question, and I might actually clarify this question so that we got it right. The challenge I'd been thinking about with a few of us was growing kind of the 200 that have turned up today. How do we keep that going? It was something around that. What's the problem or the challenge that we have there? How do we keep, after today, and at the moment, at this stage, it's going to go quiet, right? Because we have a steering committee that will sum up and wrap up and will produce some awesome artefacts and will feed them back to the community, and people will take their stuff back into their networks. But at this stage, I don't know where it's going. So is the challenge around the broader of us 200? Is that what we want to tackle? Yes. Great. So the question we had up there, Sarah, was...
How might we grow and or engage the whole community? I think also we had it in new ways, didn't we? The original question.
In new ways, yeah. So we had 2 words there, which I sometimes get worried about with a how might we statement. How might we grow the community, broader community? How might we engage? Should we tackle both of those?
The presumption in the question is that we're the only ones doing things, and I think if you've got a multi-stakeholder community, some with their own agenda, some with very different levels of activity, sometimes we need to empower other participants and help them see that there is a connection back into the internet community. So for Indigenous Australia, which I do not speak for, they have their own shit going on. But there are things that they could benefit from and the internet community could benefit from if synergies were identified. But we don't want them dancing to our tune. We want to be able to find a natural way where we can join their community and they can join ours. So I know that's not helpful in terms of phrasing, but I think we shouldn't be limited to only the things we can do. What things can we support? What things can we empower that others are doing? So it's the identification and letting others act as well as our own actions.
It strikes me that we've got around 200 odd people that were interested in coming along today, but that's largely a function of the organisations and the people that were involved in the workshops a year and 2 years ago, and it being held geographically here in Sydney, where a large proportion of people are. If we hold it in different places, we have it in different types, if we have different, we are naturally going to get different people. Do we want the same 200 people to turn up again next year? Probably not, because we want the benefits of NetThing, in whatever they are, to be distributed over a much wider range of peoples, of backgrounds, of experiences and sources. So if we can get 200 people, but they're mostly different people, with enough people with experience of the previous one to help seed some of the discussions and help facilitate some of the workshops, that may actually have more of an impact on more people over a decade than having the same 200 people turn up to the same conference, or having 500 people or 1,000 people turn up to one place one time, when they're the same people that you often see at industry conferences, the same faces year after year after year. Are they getting as much value out of it as somebody who has never attended one before? Maybe we encourage people to attend if they've, with some sort of special benefits, if they've never attended one before.
So I'm wondering if we need to slightly rephrase the question, and it feels like it's more about engaging rather than growing.
I think it's the organisations that we engage with. We've got a lot of people from outer, we've got a lot of people from Internet Australia. I think we need to be really cognizant of the organisations that we partner with, the champions that we partner with, the people we have as champions from those organisations. So I think that's what sort of organisations do we want to partner with. That will drive it, so we don't have the usual suspects.
Just a very quick point, because it helps with the last 2 points that was mentioned. If we see ourselves as a network of networks, as opposed to a community, I think that's more helpful, because it's not about people necessarily. I'm a community person, but people change in those organizations, but this is a meta layer. It also will help with what Andrew mentioned. If we see ourselves as a network of networks, I think a lot of things start making sense.
Simple question from me, why do we want it any bigger? If we're not, I mean, I used to own a company that ran conferences, so generally speaking, you want lots of people to come along because they're all paying and you make more money. But if we're not trying to make more money, why do we want more people? Don't we want to focus on making the event better so the outcomes are better? I come back to my point about outcomes.
Thanks. So I definitely agree that we need to bring in more perspectives and make sure we have a diverse viewpoint. But we need to also make sure, as we bring in these new perspectives, that we're very careful that the narrative doesn't get dominated by certain narrow perspectives that then scare away the new folks. I know in the New Zealand community this is a challenge, in the Australian community, in the APR IGF community. A lot of times in these sessions you have the same people speaking up very strongly, and that not only dominates the conversation, it also kind of alienates some other perspectives, so folks don't feel comfortable speaking up. So the code of conduct's a good start, but I mean, few of you went to NetHui a couple weeks back. There's a huge infrastructure that moves that code of conduct from being a piece of paper into a culture, and I think that's something we need to take very seriously, so people feel welcome when they're new, when they have a different perspective to speak up.
I think that's really great, and I might just check if there's no... I feel like I want to rephrase the question. It's not about growing the community. There's something about engaging, something about, could we focus... One way to take this in the next 10 minutes is, here's a one-off annual event that we've just done pretty well. How could we do it better? Not the one-off event, but are there other things that we could be doing? Is that where the question should go, the how might we statement should go?
I'd suggest building the community is good enough. I mean, building is both strengthening and growing. It's establishing the community more than it is now. I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be bigger, I agree, but a community that is built has got, you know, some solid level of engagement and so on. And I think it really is the question, like, how is this community to be built so that it continues?
Yes, just building on that, there's something I think, if this is to be effective, that means that it must engage all key stakeholders, and that's effective. Size is a secondary. Size doesn't matter.
Okay, I think Narelle, one last comment, and then we need to get into the sticky noting, otherwise I'm going to run over time and I'll make myself unhappy.
I think it is important that this community grows and it engages more broadly and becomes more sustainable. And it needs to have that sense of, there needs to be some sort of, hardcore regulatory topics that are in hand each year. And, right at the moment, the INSLM, the intelligence, whatever it is, National Legislation Security Monitor, is assessing the assistance and access bill. We're not really covering that topic. And there are some nitty-gritty, hardcore governance issues that we should be thrashing out and feeding into the various different stakeholders as they go on into the other decision-making forums. And I think for this organisation, for this event to have some impact, then it needs to be able to feed those things and feed them well, and it needs to do that through a larger community, more sessions, and more engagement all around, and without burning people out.
Okay, thank you. So that's probably a perfect time to start the brainstorming.
Because then it's like the how do we do
Yep, so how do we do it? I'm going to keep this one really tight. It's 2:47, 2 minutes. Go. Every single good idea that you can think of to strengthen the community. And strengthen could be grow and engage, can mean whatever we mean. It can be the how do we do it.
And we're doing this individually and silently.
Individually and silently first. The question is still the same. How might we strengthen the community? And I think we're more in the how. How might we strengthen the community? Okay, I'll get you to finish up your last one. For the next 30 seconds, look at your awesome ideas and pick your top 2. Just your top 2. What are the best ideas you just come up with? Is it, Joe, what's your name? Apparently Joseph's come up with the best ideas. Oh no, it's you. It's Kat. It's a collective. Has everybody got their top 2? Okay, can you swiftly get back into those original groups? 3 minutes, because time's tight. 3 minutes into your groups, share your ideas and pick out your top 2 or 3. Please. And if you've got them already, start getting them neatly on your sticky notes, the assigned handwriter. It's fine. They're good. Beautiful. Excellent. Okay. Couple of minutes. Get your top 2 or 3 out. Neatly written with your beautiful black texter. Have each of you assigned a group representative? Someone new this time? Someone who hasn't spoken? Yes. Okay, we're stopping now. Can I get everybody to wind up? Return. It's that rowdy bunch of men over there. Are we all ready? Okay, we're going to start with this group over here. Are we ready? I'd like you to collectively come back to the broader group. Thank you. Andrew's got his back. Peter Tonoli, what's happening with your group? Okay.
We can see that.
10 seconds, go. How are we off? Oh, okay. We have 6 minutes for the remainder of this session and we've got to get them all up, and there's 6 groups, so it's 60 seconds each. Who wants to go first? First group, go, go, go. We're in a hurry. Go. Okay. Oh, sorry. They're going second. Adam, you go first.
Oh, okay. Have an open program process with more diverse topics and views. Actually become a member-based organisation, so there's some ongoing base. And let's work out what our objectives are, actually.
There's something that I'll jump on because that was their idea. Cautious of member-based models, they've got a tendency to be gamed. But this idea runs counterintuitive to a multi-stakeholder model, but we've got to define what this is. For all the fun of a NetThing idea, it's an amorphous concept and it doesn't resonate with everyone, or if they have to stop for more than 30 seconds in their busy day to think about whether they're coming or not, they probably won't. So define what we're having. have a defined steering group, have a charter that hangs off it, and it can be a very open charter, and then have targets and outputs every year. So something's going to come in every year and something's going to, we promise, go out of it. And that can be up for renegotiation before Christmas every year. Before we all wrap up for Christmas, we take the October to end of year period to knock it all together. And that means that everything else that we wrote down as a group flows from that, articulating our objectives, measurable outcomes, all of that sort of stuff. No, the number one is just defining the group.
Excellent. So the next group, can we get going?
I just need the stickies from.
Oh, you get the stickies. I'll do the group. Okay. Pete Tonoli's group.
So our first one comes primarily driven by what Narelle said before. And it's related to relevance. We need to focus on measurable outcomes. We need to be selective and current when deciding what to present, and timely and relevant documents as topics. Second one is money makes the world go around. To be strong, we need money. We need sponsorships. We need bigger marketing budget to get the messaging out there. But that's easier said than done. Third thing is, similarly IGF, that we should have smaller events throughout the year, and they feed in to the bigger event, rather than having a big bang, all in one day, that we build the community incrementally and over time.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Pete's group.
Could you bring those up?
Bronwyn's group.
Okay, 3 main ideas. First one is set up public channels for ongoing discussion, so maybe a mailing list or social media, so that there's a public space for people to contribute to, not just the NetThing Twitter account, for example, but everyone. We can all have our feedback and our voices heard in that sort of public arena. The other one is to get more people on the steering committee from diverse backgrounds and groups, so more representation, not just within the immediate internet governance community, but from people representing other groups. For example, myself, I represent, I'm a university student as well, so I was able to use that network and that channel to promote to other university students. So non-traditional promotion methods and representations will allow us to use our own networks to promote the event and have more people have their voices heard in this community. And the third idea was around creating some kind of mass campaign or crises around particular issues that are pressing in the community. So, for example, cybersecurity or the AA bill, perhaps creating mass campaigns that a lot of people can get behind from our own channel, and then kind of aggregating all the community voices to feed into that sort of campaign.
Fantastic, thank you. Anyone left? Kat's group.
Bronwyn, do you mind bringing your stickies up? Your top 3, thanks.
So with our group, we have the first idea was focus on quality and not quantity, and the quality is in regards to the actual program and having the right people there, because you want to have the right crowd. When you do say public, you can't say in marketing terms the whole public can attract. You need segmented groups and tailored and targeted audiences to attend, but that will come through having a quality program. The other idea was great that we've gone through and done NetThing, and when you go through, it's like, oh yeah, all these different ideas come up. And the second idea, it was around sponsorship packages and creating things like having a coffee cart sponsor, a networking drink sponsor, maybe possibly having exhibition booths where different brands can come in and have their say of whatever. And then also the final idea around that was having a sponsor on volunteer t-shirts and having their logo on there and supplying the volunteers with some t-shirts.
Thank you, Kat. And we've got Paul Brooks's group, and we're nearly there.
So I'll grab this one. We came up with two that are fairly similar. So it does need to be focused on a topic, and it needs to be focused on an outcome, and that gives people the incentive to keep working on it between sessions online and things like that, if there is a report or something coming out. So ideally, future events, if they're focused on a topic du jour that's maybe the subject of a currently open government inquiry, the outcome of the day
is the distilled collective opinion of the masses from a grassroots bottoms-up approach that gets provided as input to that inquiry, is a worthy goal of what NetThing can do in terms of gathering the opinion of the masses, and also something that ideally government or whoever it is that is looking for the input, this is one way to legitimise how they're gathering their input. So that was that one. And if we change the session structure from experts down the front talking to an audience to experts available to listen to questions and provide clarifications from the crowd, that provides the incentive for people to come to get answers rather than listening to talking heads talk.
Thank you very much. Have we missed anyone? It's 3 o'clock, so the outcome of this will feed directly back into the steering committee, so thank you very much. There's been some really fantastic ideas. And just to Paul's point, that's what I thought we were doing with the panels, but we haven't really pulled it off. So we're very conscious of that. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. So I think 3 o'clock back in here, back into the main room. Is it 2 o'clock? 3 o'clock. Well, it's 3 o'clock. So if you guys can head back into that main room now, because that session will have started, just about to start. And thank you very much. Your ideas have been really, really helpful and awesome, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, whoever's out there.